One. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
It looks like we don't have quorum yet, unless maybe Miranda can see better because
It looks like you do need one more. One, two.
I was wondering if there are any call-ins.
No,
Yeah.
no call-ins. Once you have one, well, I see that Greg's on, but no, like just phone number.
Okay,
It looks like
Am
you
I
just.
in? This is Ron. Am I in?
Oh, Ron, you're in. You're a part of my count.
Okay.
I heard from Karina a little bit ago that she would be coming in later.
Looks like you just need one more, and then you are good to go. So.
okay.
Andrew just joined, so you can get started if you'd like.
Okay. Let's call the meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. Kate, can you call the roll?
Yes. Steve Carreau. Rhea Ortner. I thought I saw Rhea. Karina Lucier. Barb Hart.
Here?
Okay. Yeah, they're taking roll.
Andrew Duarte.
Here.
Oh, Andrew. Okay.
Here.
Ron Mitchell.
Here.
Danielle Kraus.
Here.
Steve Roundtree.
Here.
Jonathan Baumhover. All right. That's the end of roll call.
Do you want to go back for Rhea just to confirm she can hear us? And vice
Okay.
versa?
Rhea
Hey, she's
Rhea.
there.
I know I saw her for a while.
I'm here. I'm
Oh,
just,
there you are.
I'm on my iPhone, and I guess I don't not very good using it right now. I'm muting myself, but I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. I'd like to ask if there are any questions or comments on the consent agenda. Okay, hearing none. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Ron.
Second,
Second.
and Kate, can you call a roll?
All right. Let's see. Rhea Ortner. Barb Hart.
Yes?
Andrew Duarte.
It's Stewart and yes.
Duarte, sorry.
All right.
I'm a yes as well.
All right. Thanks. Ron Mitchell.
Yes.
Danielle Kraus.
Yes.
Steve Roundtree.
Yes.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to ask if there's any public comment on non-agenda items. I'm not hearing or seeing any, so we will move on to the next agenda item.
Stay off the video, please.
The first agenda item is the approval of July warrants.
Barb, you actually already did that under consent, so you can skip
I'm
straight to public art.
Yay.
And I believe Steve has joined us.
Okay, and straight to public art. And I believe that Danielle is introducing this.
I think that Kate is introducing.
Okay, is
Yeah,
introducing.
with
Okay.
Danielle and everyone here. Let me pull up the right thing here. It's not. Sorry, I'm having some technological issues. I'm trying to get there as fast as possible. All right. So, yeah, tonight I'm here with Danielle and the consultant that we hired to help us with the public art project, I believe is on, Carissa Samaniego, and the artist who we're bringing to you for a recommendation, Greg Marquez. To start, on June 25th, the Npac, the Nederland Public Art Committee, in coordination with our consultant, Carissa Samaniego, released an RFQ for an artist for the planned mural project. The RFQ closed on July 15th with 21 applications received. 11 applications were determined to be local artists, and of this group, 4 artists rose to the top. Greg Marquez was selected as the artist for recommendation to the board. On August 5th, the Npac met with Mr. Marquez to see preliminary images and hear his initial thoughts on the project. The image you see tonight is based on initial feedback from the NPAC received during that meeting in preparation for this presentation to the board. The Npac will continue to work with Greg to incorporate feedback from the NDDA should you choose to approve his recommendation and execute his mural agreement. And Miranda, can you scroll to his image, or Danielle, if you want to hop in, or Carissa, if anybody wants to say anything before we show the image, or any questions?
I will work on changing the orientation of this too. Hold on one.
I thought I had fixed that.
That's its own WebEx or a PDF issue, but I can't see everything. So let me stop sharing for a minute and I will get to your.
You know what? Let me send you something.
Okay, great.
That would be probably easier.
That sounds wonderful. I like easy.
I hope we all like suspense.
Sorry. We're
Drum
just
roll.
getting into a better image, and Carissa sent me a great image, and it was, because it's a JPEG, it was difficult to put into the PDF, and I thought I had got it, but I didn't.
I would argue it's not a virtual meeting without some sort of technological hiccup. It just seems like.
There's only 5
Nailing
pages
it.
open on my screen right now. Okay, Carissa.
That was a nice teaser. I love those colors.
It was. Piqued your interest here.
All right, I just emailed you
Okay.
the attachment.
Sometimes it can take a minute, but.
Well, are there any questions while we're waiting for the image? Does anybody want to share anything?
Or Kate, if you have it up and it's easier, it's not coming through yet, but it can often take a while on our end.
Okay, let me just see if I can make it.
I can rotate to lower.
Oh, I sent you the wrong thing because it was a separate, sorry, here. Actually, this might be actually better here. Okay. If this gets to you, but I'll try to pull it up too and see if I can.
Send that. I actually was able to rotate it. So let me stop killing the suspense here.
You got it.
Yeah, it's in the PDF form, but
The big reveal.
the moment, we're here. And I don't know if Greg, I think Greg, you're on if you wanted to like share
Yeah,
with
if
us.
you want to
what-
share anything, Greg, please.
I think I had muted you, so you may need to unmute yourself.
I was muted. Okay, what do you want to know?
Well,
Good.
yeah, this is Greg's preliminary. It is 2 foot by 4 foot, so it is to scale for our 8 foot by 16 foot mural on the Business Connection. And we loved his colors and his portfolio, and for his letter of intent and the artists that he was inspired by really struck us. And of the 4 top artists, we enjoyed his work enough to see what he wanted to come up with, and we were floored. It's just charming for us. It's colorful, captivating, and we feel that it fits Nederland really well. And we're excited to hear what you guys think.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you, Greg.
You're welcome.
Barbara, I had a couple questions, if possible. This is Steve.
Steve?
Yeah. Greg, I was wondering, for this mural, would there be any faces on the animals, or would it be pretty much like it's shown here for your sample?
Pretty much like it's there. It's more about color than, I didn't really want to make a field guide. There will be a slight more detail on the animals in front, just to give it a more of a sense of depth. But no faces was my intent. The fox, on the other hand, as I say that, the fox will be the only figure actually looking at the viewer.
Right. That sounds cool. The other question or comment I wanted to make is I really loved, I think it was within the AIM perhaps, or somewhere in the literature, your kind of philosophy about the mural and, you know, how it ties in with Nederland and children's kind of curiosity about animals and wildlife and all. And I was wondering if we might be able to do some type of a depiction of that, you know, with the mural, if people are looking at it, that they could kind of read some of those thoughts that went into it. So it seems like that would be a neat angle to the mural.
Oh, you mean like a sign on the side there alongside the mural, or something to that effect?
Yeah, sort of like a little descriptive panel, or there's a
Sure.
real term for it I can't think of right now.
I mean, I have no problems with that. And I think, go
I'll
ahead.
chime in on that. If I may interrupt, I believe that we would have to figure out approval for plaques, and that might be something we can do later down the road as we get more work up in town to have a consistent plaque. And with getting approval for murals, one of the agreements is not to have words. So we would have to learn how to do that appropriately. And it would not be something I would want to rush because I would like it to look good to match the artwork. But we could look into that.
Thanks. That sounds good. And it struck me and kind of piqued my curiosity when I was reading about that, and, you know, kind of about the artist's thoughts that went into the mural. That's all I had. Other than I really like it. I think it's really
Thank you.
cool. Yeah, and also the rest of that portfolio that was shown within the AIM, that was really nice.
What is the AIM that you've referred to a couple times?
So it's called the agenda information or information item for the meeting. And so it's just a bit that has all we put in your bio, your submission. So that's
cool.
what Steve is referencing largely is your submission. And then it has the information that I read before about the RFQ process. And so it's just how our board gets updated on items.
Well, thank you.
Is there any other questions?
Well, this is Andrew, and sorry to, if this is spelled out somewhere, but so there's a reason we can't have a plaque with words next to the artist mural?
I'm not sure that we would not be allowed to put a plaque up, and that is something I would like to look into for future works, including this one. But as far as I had learned working with Town Hall, we are not allowed to put signs up with words without getting further approval and permits done. So as our committee develops and we get more experience, that is something I would like to do and incorporate it in a type of brochure that people can look at that maps out the town and where each piece of artwork is and a description of them. So it is something that we would like to look into.
Okay, yeah, I can certainly understand large format words, not, or needing to be vetted but as far as a, plaque, a description and artist name, so on and so forth, that is small and, you have to be 2 feet away to read. I kind of see those as a couple of different things. So that would be the only thing I would bring up, is that I would want the artist to be recognized.
I like that.
I do too.
This is Miranda. I just wanted to clarify too. So Danielle, you were right. Depending on what the nature of the sign is really how we would approach that. But if it's just a plaque, that is something that can be done without necessarily additional town staff approval.
Excellent. Thank you, Miranda.
Thanks, Miranda.
Thank you.
Okay, and does anyone else have other questions for Greg or Danielle? I don't have any questions. I think it's amazing and I would love to see it move forward. That's my only comment.
Me too. I'm ready. Stamping at the bit.
Okay. Seeing and hearing no other board comment, I would like to ask if there is any public comment on the item. And seeing and hearing no public comment, since this is an action item, would someone like to make a motion?
I motion that we move forward with this mural and Greg's work.
Second, this is Rhea.
And Kate, would you call the roll?
I will. So, Steve Carot,
Yes.
Rhea Ortner,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes.
Andrew Dwart,
Yes.
Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Motion passes. Let's move on to the next action item, which is the NED special event funding request. And Kate, do you want to introduce this or do you want me to?
Yeah. You can. I can kind of chime in with anything, but feel free to kick it off. Or actually, here, I'll just say this to start. So you'll see in the attached AIM that the costs and a cost breakdown of some of the things that Teens Inc. is facing in their cost gaps. And so the question funding request and what level of funding. And I will tell you that right now you have $5,500 sitting in that account. And there has been conversations with Wild Bear as well about accessing the fund. They just couldn't get an application to us in time this month because they were working on another grant. So I just wanted to put those items out there for you to consider while you're discussing. And Barb, you can take over from there.
Thanks. So Sioux Churches came to the DDA and asked if we would be willing to be a sponsor of the NED this year. It's been back and forth a bit because of COVID, and they're really excited that it's moving forward. And because of what their costs are, they were asking us for any kind of sponsorship. Sue is on the call and can answer questions for you. And yeah, the information is in the summary of what they're looking at for costs for the NED. And Sue, do you want to give a little bit more information?
Sure, I can give some info here. The costs that you see are things that we would pay for as necessary items for hosting a race. So you can't host a race without a timer or a place to start and stop, bibs where you can determine who comes in what place, awards to give out to people for actually finishing the race, awards for people who come in and place during the race. And permitting wasn't even included in this initial cost. Those costs were based on 2019 costs to us and actual invoicing. So those invoices come in after quite a bit after the fact. So we would just love it if the DDA would consider helping us. I did put a range down there between $1,000 and $2,000 for these necessary items to help us out with that. It is a fundraiser. We've been doing it for 7 years out of the 39 years that it's been going on. Next year it's 40 years. So to add to that budget, we have t-shirts, we have marketing, we have materials like tents that blow over and we have to replace, cones that get lost, signage, food. Just, you know, it just takes so much more than just placing cones and telling people to go have fun. Why do we do this? I won't take up any more of your time, but why? Because it's in our mission. Teens Inc. literally says in its mission that we provide healthy choices so that families and youth in our area thrive. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Sue, this is Andrew Dewart. Just wondering, are you reaching out to like a potential sponsorship level tier to, you know, whether it's a logo on a bib or tent or whatnot, to private entities that would want to contribute funds?
Yes. So I have a list of people that I try to get involved every year. That includes United Power, the bank, local bank in town, Tebow. I've got also Western Disposal. I've approached them as well. So yeah, I reach out to people that know us and are local, and then try to reach out to people beyond that. Not necessarily for sponsorship, Andrew, but for donations and pledges. So there's a site that I put up called Pledge It, where people can go and create a team or individually, you know, give us some money for supporting people who are either racing or just as a donation to us. We have not been that successful with getting people to understand it's not just a race, that it's literally a fundraiser for Teens Inc. So I'm hoping that this pledge, to answer your question, yes, I do. Some people have given this year. It's been a really tough year. And yeah, so we do ask people individually and businesses and more corporate for funding.
Great. That's all I wanted to check in about. Thank you so much, Sue, for all the work you're doing for that.
Sure.
This is Rhea. As a follow-up to the sponsorship program, if the DDA were to contribute funds, would we be an official sponsor and would our name be out there as one of the contributors?
Yes.
Yeah,
So
I think it's
Mm-hmm.
That's great. I think it's important, since this is property tax money for the most part that our commercial businesses are contributing. I think it's important that it, we think about that, and that, and I only imagine bringing all these people to the mountains does increase revenue for the local businesses, people who might want to go out for lunch or, something like that afterwards, or spend money in town. So I'm all for it. I have to say, I was a little surprised how expensive medals are, and I guess that's just the way it is. And as a person who has never received a medal, of course, in the Ned race, I guess they must be pretty nice or something. Anyway.
Oh, well, hang on. Let me see if I have a sample here, Rhea. Those medals are really expensive because they're also given out as part of the series. So I'm also part, or I'm not, but the race is also part of a series where it's a half marathon. It's called the Colorado Mountain Half Series, and we are in with Estes Park and Georgetown. And the medals look like this. It's a medal, if you can see it. And this medal is the last of the series. Estes starts over here, Georgetown is in the middle, and we are at the end. And it's a magnet that connects all three medals together. So yeah, it's something that people collect, and it means a lot to them. And it's also part of what we do to be part of a series and try to grow this into something larger.
Hey, those are so cool. I had no idea. I was just thinking about like the medals the kids get at soccer. So like I appreciate you showing me that. I think those are awesome. Thanks.
Great.
Anyone?
Steve Curro, do you have any?
Yeah, thank you. I have a few things. Number one is I love Teens Inc. It's such an amazing organization, does so much for our town, through all of their programs. So I love to support them in any way that we can. I also wanted to mention that just some history on the board. We had set up this fund of about $5,500. I think it was in 2019. When we were getting a lot of requests for donations from event sponsors in town, like the High Peaks Art and Frozen Dead Guy Days, and so many things. And so I just wanted to say that from some conversations a couple of years ago with the board, we were thinking something in the range of about $1,000 per event was sort of a reasonable amount back then. And I think that it's true right now, we don't have many events coming to town because of COVID. But I thought that, just to think that this money might be able to be pushed into next year as well, whatever isn't used. And so I would just kind of wanted the board to think about, that we probably will get other requests for funding for events in the coming year. So while we have a lot of money in that fund right now, I just would caution against spending all of it, or a big portion of it on one event. Although I really do love the Teens Inc., everything that they do, and like Rhea said, this event is, I think, really good for town because it does bring a lot of people into town early in the day. And it's over, Sue, you could correct me, but, close to noonish. And so people are hanging around here in beautiful, fall day quite often. So I think that a lot of this, people that come to town could end up spending money with the businesses. I think that's a real plus. I guess those are all my input for now.
Great, thanks, Steve. I don't know if Karina has joined us yet.
I don't see her on the call.
Okay, I don't know because there's phone numbers and things. I don't know what belongs to who, but Danielle, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you. Steve, that information is very helpful. My thoughts were funding what's available. It seems like the perfect opportunity to use those funds set aside to help Teens Inc. with a really good cause and sponsor somebody who's doing great things for our community by using the community's money. I like the idea. That's all.
Great, thank you. And Ron, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I don't.
Okay. And for me, I pretty much, all of my questions have been answered. I think my comment would go along with what Steve had said about upcoming events, because we do know that there are other events that are going to ask us for funding. And I know there are other events that haven't really been put on the radar yet, but they are coming up, and I could see where they would potentially ask us for funding. So I kind of like the idea of sticking with the $1,000 amount that was in our old packet information, which we will be updating next month at the DDA meeting as well. So those are really the only comments that I have. And Steve Roundtree, do you have any questions or comments?
No questions. I think it's a great event, and I think being able to support it at some level seems like the right thing to do. So.
Great, thank you. Do we have any public comment? Okay. Seeing and hearing none, would anyone like to make a motion?
This is Danielle. I motion that we support Teens Inc. with a $1,000 allowance in the funding for this race.
I second that motion. This is Steve.
Thank you, Steve. And Kate, can you take a roll?
Absolutely. Steve Carreau,
Yes.
Rhea Ortner,
Yes.
and I'm going to call out for Karina just in case. Karina Lucier, Barb Hart,
Yes.
Andrew Dwart,
Yes.
Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Motion passes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Sue.
We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. And now we're going to move into the discussion items. And we have next the wayfinding. And I believe Steve is going to present this.
Yes, thank you, Barbara. We have John Bazio from Merge on the meeting with us, and he's going to give about a 15-minute presentation and then be able to answer questions from the board. And we have a limited time, obviously, and so I feel like I put a lot of questions to the board in the packet, hoping that it would get everybody's thoughts going along these lines, but I wanted to stress that for merge to move forward, John had, mentioned that the question number 1 in the AIM was the most important for merge for us to try to come to a consensus on through discussion time. So I feel like, we could address any of these other questions in our comments and discussion, but we should really be focused on that first question as far as which of those 4 options that John's going to present to us, or which parts of each of them do we feel would be most appropriate to move forward with as a design element for the wayfinding. So with that, I'd like to introduce John and have him do a presentation, and then he could follow up with any questions and answers.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you, everybody, for having me here tonight. As Steve said, we've been working on the wayfinding program. The presentation that I'm going to give you is just sort of, first part's really just a summary of some of the wayfinding assessment that we've been doing. I was in Nederland actually prior to even starting the project, so I have been there and sort of know my way around a little bit. But the first part is really the wayfinding assessment. The second part is the design, which you've seen some of the designs in the packet, and I'll go through those in a little bit more detail. And then we've also have developed some pricing and looked at both static and digital kiosk options for you. So, the point of the assessment really is to say, here are all the things you could do. You could do all of them. You could do 2 of them. You could do none of them. That's up to you. You can sort of set priorities, phase it, all based on what you feel like is the important piece for your community. With the assessment, often people think that I come into town, I run around, we put up signs everywhere. That's not what we do. We think about it holistically. So when we think about wayfinding, before someone even arrives to Nederland, what kind of information do they get? Can they use their phone to find their way? So, earlier when you were talking about the murals and having a tour, do you have a printed brochure? Do you have a mobile app or, a responsive website? Maybe all 3. Those are the types of things you might consider. Even the environment and how that plays a role in your ability to find your way. In Nederland, it also plays a role in the design of materials and sustainability of materials. So there are things that we can think about as well. And then support information, things like maps and visitor guides and brochures. You want to make sure that all these things are talking to each other. So what I saw on a website before I arrived, maybe for an event, is a brochure that I pick up, and that graphic is the same as the signage that I see around town. And I really start to build trust in the program. So again, I'm just going to real quick summary of the report and what's in there. We talked a little bit about mobile apps and what kind of content you might consider. We talked about orientation maps and making sure that graphically that is something that matches the wayfinding signage so that we have a design language. We looked at the gateways coming into town. So when we get into sort of these physical aspects of the town and wayfinding, it's helping us to identify a scope for you for the project, as how many gateways are there, which gateways are your wow gateway where you really want to maybe announce that you've arrived, and which is just sort of a secondary or tertiary gateway in, and it's maybe just a post and panel, and you can even apply cost to that as you go through a budgeting portion. We start to put together a destination list of what would we direct to. Community wayfinding, when we're talking about vehicular and pedestrian directional signs, we're basically directing to nonprofit, arts and culture, parks and rec, government facilities, historic sites, visitor services. We'll talk a little bit about directing to businesses and identifying businesses, maybe on kiosks and some specialty signs. But we wanted to see how many destinations are we really talking about. And then we just started to identify those destinations on a map, so we understood where those elements or where those destinations may be. We start to identify where kiosks may be. So just real preliminary sort of idea of having them down by the park and over by the carousel, real sort of gathering points. You could have one up by the community center. So just to get an idea, is there 1 kiosk? Is there 5 kiosks? Are there 10 kiosks? And then we just did a real quick generic menu of sign types. So if you were going to do a wayfinding program in Nederland, what types of elements might you consider? So no design applied to this, really just generically looking at the scope and the scale. So is there a primary gateway element, that can be a spectrum of something very simple to something like here, we just said, maybe there's a piece of public art with it. Or is there a secondary where it's just a panel? Vehicular directional signs, getting people to parking, identifying the parking lot, getting out of your car, becoming a pedestrian, and having a kiosk and what that kiosk might entail. And then other pedestrian elements, interpretive panels, banners, and we even talked with, when we met with the stakeholder groups, possibly expanding it out into parks. So maybe we could do a plaque for the mural. That's what I was thinking when I watched the earlier presentation. So we could sneak that in here as well. So that really gave us sort of the scope of things you might consider. Some of the background work, we were able to look at some of these sign types and come up with quantities, which we'll talk about, and give you the opportunity to make sort of informed decisions about cost as we go forward. And we'll talk about that. From a design standpoint, we really wanted to consider mountain climate conditions when we talk about materials. Cost obviously will be a component we'll speak about. Are there opportunities for business inclusion? And you'll see sign types for that. Local character, local art. So you'll see we've tried to include that in all of them, some a little bit more than others, if you want to do that. Maintenance, materials, typefaces, color palettes. So that's all sort of components of what we're looking at as we look at each option. So for each option, what we did is we started with sort of an inspiration board. So this one really concentrated more on sort of a rustic and authentic look, brought in some more local materials and elements and shapes that way. And I'll zoom in on some of this. So for each menu that you see, has sort of a series of sign types. There's the vehicular directional sign. There are standard traffic engineering criteria we have to meet on those. So reflective copy, breakaway poles, specific copy heights, 4-inch high copy, and typefaces. Then we have parking signs, a kiosk, a business sign, which I'll talk about, a park sign, and a banner. So this is option 1. And again, we sort of brought in some different materials here. Wood pole, or I'm sorry, I-beam pole. The sign panels for vehicular signs will be reflective, directing people to parking, and then having a sign at the parking lot. This is the back of the sign. So, this element that we show, this pattern, that can be something that can vary and could be where you bring in local artists to come up with a pattern that is part of the bracket system. We would just sort of allow for that element. You'll see with the kiosk, I think earlier we talked about, having things in one of the stakeholder meetings. I think we talked about having things low so kids can go up to a kiosk and get information. And then the business sign, I'll sort of zoom in on some of those. So here's a kiosk element. This would be a static kiosk. It's just real basic post and panel. Again, the I-beams are the material. It would be a powder-coated graphic with a map on there. On the side, it says information. The building directory is something you could have in the downtown area, maybe at the corners, listing what businesses are at each on each block. And then there's a park sign and then a banner as well. With that business one, in this version, what you'll see is you would just have the same plaque over and over, all the businesses' names would be in the same typeface all the way through. You'll see in another version where we're saying, well, maybe everybody gets to use their logo or something, sort of make it a little bit more funkier. Option 2 was natural and mountain. We brought a little bit more stone into this one in the kiosks. We also brought in a canopy into the kiosk. Wood pole, where the last one was I-beam. This is a wood pole. We brought in sort of accent of sort of heavy duty brackets, making it look really solid. The colors are much cooler than the previous one. The first one had some warm reds and oranges. This is cooler blues. Again, wood poles, and protecting the wood pole in the wintertime with sort of a metal cusp at the bottom. Then here again, the pedestrian sign. So you get out your car, maybe there is a kiosk. Gateways and kiosks can always vary in cost depending upon the extent of the design. So in that first one, just two posts and a panel. This one has a stone base, has a canopy. The business directory, having those listed. I don't have that there, sorry. And then a park sign where you start to identify pictograms for the different activities that are in a park. And then again, a banner element. The backs of the signs can have a graphic on it. Again, that may be where you bring in some local artists to provide patterns. And if there's a theme that's going on with the murals, maybe there's a little bit of a correlation between the two. And then our last one is the artful, sort of quirky version. This is a really colorful version, a fun version. We started, I'm showing you this just for a second. We started with this one, but the patterns on it were a little bit too southwest. So we worked with Steve and Claudia. She sent us some information, and we got a little bit more sort of local in that, and some things to make it a little bit less geometric, I think. Again, these are opportunities where art can play into components of the sign itself. So you see it on sort of the parking lot ID or on the back of the sign. This is sort of a dual post option. You can see, it becomes a much more colorful system, not only in the parking and kiosk elements, even the way we're breaking up the colors there. But if you have a business directory, maybe they are all different colors, different typefaces, sort of the character of that particular business. And then, trying to make a sister program to the parks, where it has the same language, or maybe it sits back. It doesn't have to be as colorful. You could do tone on tone, bring in, but maintain that concrete base and maintain that design language of the poles. So here is, some more close-ups of that. Having it very modular so that you can update information as necessary over the long haul. And with that, I guess I'll take any comments. I do have sort of costs associated with different elements and the quantities and that. And Steve also asked me to put together some information regarding static versus digital kiosks, which we can talk about as well. So Steve, I don't know if you want to add anything more to that.
No, I think that was a nice overview, and some of the members here have heard it, before in the past. But no, I think it would be good just to open it up for discussion and questions for you, John, most likely. And just to remind people that need to really be addressing these design elements tonight more than the other questions, although we could bring those into the discussion. So yeah, Barb, I don't know if you want to call on people or if people just want to ask John questions or give comments.
Let's start with Danielle.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you, John. These are great. Your presentation was beautiful. The graphic design is very well done. I really enjoy the first design. I like the I-beams with the mining history here. The I-beams really catch my attention. I also enjoy the warmer colors. It gets cold up here and windy, I like the consistency of the colors. Compared to the third design with the more hippie colors, my brain starts wondering about color code. Like, is there a code for each green sign for the businesses? So I would like to point out, I like the simplicity of the first one where they're all uniform. I also think that would be cost effective in updating and keeping it simple. And for the stonework on the second design, I feel like the mixture of the wood and stone is beautiful, but it seems to me a little more cold and a little busy and distracting from what the signs are actually presenting. So if I needed to vote on that tonight, I like the first designs. I think they're beautiful. I think they represent a feel for our town, and I would like to see them. And that's all I have.
Great, thanks, Danielle. Andrew, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, so I appreciate the presentation you did, John, and the thought given to the design. And back to, I think ultimately, I think you mentioned at the tail end that you had some budget numbers associated with the various signs, but I see, I will say that I was not at the previous meeting when the design agreement was entered into. I was absent for medical issues, but I see designs that are great that will cost a tremendous amount of money. And I would just say, from my point of view, stopping the bleeding and putting everything into digital, and whether it's like getting that all into something that could be an app where people could have it on their phone, and it's 80% digital and maybe there's 20% signage throughout town, would be what I would suggest at this point, just looking at like I-beams and masonry and the actual, I'd love to hear, it'd be interesting to kind of get some round numbers from you of, what the proposed budget for any of these particular designs would be for the town, should the town say, all right, we want to go forward with this one, what the budget of that would be, because I have a feeling it's not many people are tuned into what this is actually going to cost. So with that, I'm just going to say that my vote would be to, push you as Merge to put all of 80 to 90% of your energy into a digital platform that could be turned into an app, and that remaining 10% into maybe 1 or 2 kiosks centrally located. So I'll leave it at that.
Great, thank you, Andrew. And Ron, do you have any questions or comments? Ron?
The meeting.
Not sure if we lost Ron. How about Steve Roundtree? Am I saying your name right?
You are.
Thank you.
I guess I really like to be able to look at the 3 different options. I think it helps maybe identify the one that feels like it fits the town. I do kind of agree with Danielle on option 1, feeling like a kind of the right feel. I also, agree with Andrew to some extent on Signage is really costly, and I know in this environment, it's really harsh. And I know at Eldora we've spent a lot of money on signage over the years, and it can feel like it's a hard thing to keep maintained. So I think being mindful about the type of signs and the volume of them that go up to avoid having too much repair and maintenance costs that come with it. But I like the option one as far as looking at the actual design elements and maybe feeling like that one looks like maybe they just look sturdy, but it does feel like kind of a good overall look, and they look sturdy for this environment. So I think that's the extent of my input on it.
Great, thanks, Steve. And Rhea, do you have any questions or comments?
Hi, thanks for calling on me. And thanks, John, for putting together these options. I guess I see the physical signs as the first step. And then second step is getting the apps. I think physical signs are super important. I'm not so concerned with apps. Maybe there's a way to phase the physical signs over time to spread out the money. In terms of the design, I'm all about the stone and wood. No numbers have been presented, I understand that, but it's not like you're gonna have a stone base on every sign. It might be that one with the cover on it. I think having the cover is very clever. That said, I like the warm colors. I like the warm colors of number one, and I like the stone and wood of number two. Personally, I think on number one, too, there was also some metal that was, had like cut out of the metal, the sign. I thought that was kind of clever. I think, you know, if it's possible for us to all come to consensus, what we like the best, and then we can work out the costing and the phasing. And, you know, there's a lot of talented carpenters and artisans and masons in this town. And, you know, we may be able to leverage some of those connections to get better deals on some of this stuff when it comes down to it. And again, I do want to look towards the electronic part of it. I don't want electronic kiosks at all. I think we need to keep Nederland rural and natural, hence the stone and wood. I'm worried about the I-beams being too industrial looking. I also like the idea on one of the signs about having, like how are we going to incorporate local artisans? I know in Merge's initial presentation to us when they were just competing for the job, they had one design, I forget it was, where they had different finials that was created by artisans on some of the signs. It would be really cool if we could somehow incorporate local art somehow in some of these designs, but keep it not too crazy. So I think someone had mentioned the back of the signs as some kind of pattern. So those are my thoughts.
Great, thanks, Rhea. And I don't see where Ron has come back on, and I don't believe Jonathan or Karina are on. Steve Carreau, did you have any additional comments?
Yes, please. Thank you, Barbara. A few of my comments were, I just wanted to talk about like kind of my theory of the overall wayfinding program and how it can help Nederland. And I see it as kind of a two-part. The main help that we can provide to Nederland is two parts. One, I think, is by directing people to the parking lots. So by identifying which lots are usable by anybody and directing traffic to those with the vehicular signs. I think that's going to be really helpful because we hear over and over for many years how people look down First Street and don't see any spaces and, you know, keep moving on, where we have plenty of unused parking spaces around town. So I think the wayfinding can really help Nederland by making that more efficient process of getting people to park and stop and get out of their cars. And then I think the next most important part for a town is to direct people, once they do get out of their cars, to direct them as pedestrians through the town, to businesses where, say, if it's a type of food they're looking for, or type of gifts that they're looking for, or the park or whatever. So I think that we can phase this project by, really prioritizing what we're trying to achieve in the first round, and then keep adding to it to help keep the costs down for each phase. But that was one thing I wanted to mention, because I think that that would be a great thing for the town if we can get more people to stop here and direct them to what's available for them in town. And like a few other people have mentioned, I'm a big fan of digital application, like an app. I think they're just getting more and more ubiquitous, and it's going to be the type of thing in 5 years from now where more and more people are using apps on a regular basis. And I think that that's a way that we could also save some money by developing an app that is on this. We can have like a QR code on the signage, on the pedestrian signs, that people could just scan it and download the app and have all that information at their fingertips. And I think that, we could keep like pedestrian kiosks much simpler by just presenting the bare information that we want for each of the kiosks. Maybe it's the different parts of town and generally what's there, but then to have people use an app to drill down to, like, where's the hardware store, or where can I get the best beer? So I really feel like it would be great if we could put more of our efforts into the digital side for the pedestrian level signage. And I think that as far as, John's questions about design elements, I really love both the 1 and 2, the look and feel of them. I think they both fit really well with our, with Nederland, and the kind of the, steel structures that we have all around town, and stonework and wood, natural elements. And I agree with Danielle and maybe it was Rhea that mentioned about the warmer colors. I really do like the sign colors of option number 1 better. And I do like the simplicity of 1 in a lot of ways, that it doesn't distract you much. The posts are really neat and simple, and they fit in well, I think. But the sign really pops out as far as what the information is that we're trying to present. I think both 1 and 2 would have really pretty good wear and tear over the years. It's hard to beat an I-beam for wear, but be wood, with steel accents is also pretty good. So I would go for either of those. And I do feel like, although I love the 4th one, with the kind of hippie groovy look, and I think there's a large component that works well with Nederland, I do feel like that's not achieving the goal that we want of having this information kind of unified and a cohesive front, that I think all the different colors and patterns distract from that. And it looks a little bit too much like Nederland of the now, where everyone's got hand painted signs and different colors and everything. So I would go for probably number 1. I think that might be our cheapest option, if I remember from some of John's presentations. But either 1 or 2, I would be good with the, and I do like the warmer colors. Let me just look at my notes here. Yeah, and I think that Andrew pointed out that, there are some real big costs involved with all the signs that we would eventually need. So I think pretty soon we're going to have a discussion about phasing and, which signs to focus on for the first round, and just make sure that whatever it is we do on the first round is, sufficient in and of itself, like it's not lacking because we haven't done the next 2 phases yet. And again, I would just go back to, mostly dealing with vehicular parking signs for the most part, and then try to direct people to businesses and places of interest when they get out of their cars. I guess that's all of my comments for right now.
Great, thanks, Steve.
Sure.
And I think that Ron has possibly popped back on. Ron, do you have questions and comments?
I am, and agree with Andrew Dort that I think moving toward digital age is the way to go. That's all.
Thank you. then I'll just add a couple of comments of my own. I do like the colors of the first one the most, and I think it fits in with Nederland. We already have several signs that use these huge posts, including the shopping center, the Welcome to Nederland sign. So personally, I think that that one is best for town, although I do like the stonework and would like to see some stonework incorporated into the project. And like Ron and Andrew, I also think that digital is kind of the way to go. When I go anywhere, and I go a lot of places, I completely rely on my phone to get me there. Finding parking in town is damn near impossible, and having an app that I can just open up and say, I want a beer or I want food, and tells me which 11 restaurants we have in Nederland and what I might be looking for, that is what I rely on everywhere I go nowadays. So I like the signs. I think we need signs, but I also think that digital has to be incorporated in a big way, because more people that come here are going to look for us digitally than any other way. I like the signs in the last part of it, but it is a little bit too much color, and I would definitely vote for one. If we're voting tonight, would be my number one choice. Let's see. I'm assuming that Karina and Jonathan have not joined us, so I'd like to open this up for public comment. If anyone has any public comment on the wayfinding project. And seeing and hearing none.
Just wanted to, this is John.
Yeah.
So in the very beginning of the presentation, one of the things I talked about is when you think about wayfinding, you want to think about all the different tools that people utilize, right? So as we focused here on sort of the signage design, the intent of the assessment was to say, here are all the different tools that we think that you can utilize, right? So a mobile app is one of them. Digital kiosk or some sort of element like that was something we were asked to look at as well. We can talk about that if you wanted to. And then there's also the signage. And they all work together, right? So it's not that one tool, just the parking signs are going to solve it, or just the mobile app or the business directory is going to, there's just not a one size fits all. What you really want to do is get those things to talk to each other, and then allow the user to decide what they want. Do you want to present information when you think they need it, or do you want them to be able to grab the information when they want it? The other thing that the static signs what they can do is it's not only getting you from point A to point B. In our world and in our minds, the way we think of the kiosk, say, is that yes, there's a map on one side, you are here, but on the other side there is an event. You know, that you're here in July, but in October we have an event, you know, so that you come back. So we think about that as a marketing component of the sign. So not only, yes, I can get you to park quickly and efficiently, but let me tell you about something you don't know about the town. Same thing in that business directory sign. Yes, I want to eat, but when I'm done, what do I want to do after? Oh, I didn't know there was a store, you know, I need to buy shoes or whatever it might be, you know, along this block as well. I should go look at it. Where with the phone, yes, you are looking for something and it's telling you you're here and you want to go there, and that is helpful. What the signs can do is give you another layer of marketing. The other thing is when you look at the signs that are out there now, part of what you're trying to do with this system is clean up the clutter, right? So you are co-locating information, you are strategically putting signs where they belong, rather than getting to a intersection and having 3 or 4 different signs of all different sizes and colors. Now you have one sign, one color, directing me to a parking lot, and then when I get there, it's the same color. So I can anticipate it, but I'm also cleaning up sort of the visual clutter that can be out there. So that's just another piece of why you start to consider these elements. The point of the assessment was basically to say, here are all these things that you may consider. Some of them have to talk to each other and they have to go in at the same time. But you may decide to do the mobile app and you may decide to do parking signs, like Steve said. They don't necessarily talk to each other and they can be done on their own as separate efforts. And then down the road, you may say, I want to do the kiosk or the vehicular signs farther down and gateways and sort of move out. So the point of the assessment is to present those tools, get a general design, talk to you a little bit about the cost of different things, and then you can start to make those decisions as to what you may or may not move forward.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, John.
So-
And with everyone, I just shared this again. It's the Connect Las Vegas, New Mexico. It's their mobile app that ties in a lot of things from geolocation, where you're walking down the street, and it kind of may tell you what's on your right. It also incorporates historical photos, business directory, and the updated calendar, all of those things. And as far as, if the parking is the important part of what we're trying to do, then my question just comes back to, I don't know if we even as a town have parking figured out quite yet. So that's all. I'll leave it at that. But back to, I guess, your question. Yeah, number one, as far as color scheme and what I would say is least expensive. But I would still love to know some round numbers of, what you think a budget of any one of these sign proposals would be.
Yeah, and I can go. Steve, should I go through all that?
Since this is a discussion item, should we just move it? Well, we want to move it to an action item next month. So should we go through all the numbers tonight, or should we? I don't have those numbers for some reason.
Yeah, John might have them. He emailed them to us, I think, but I didn't save them on my laptop.
No, I can go through them.
Yeah. I think it might be helpful just, Barb, if we can take the time just to kind of get an idea of the scope of,
Sure.
the total cost we're talking about, because it is
Yeah,
very high.
including
Okay.
kiosks. I would love to see that information.
Yeah. So I put together this order of magnitude, and let me sort of explain some of the components. When you look at when you think about gateways or kiosks, they're the ones that, depending upon sort of the configuration and the size, and if it has a canopy, if it's illuminated, if it's digital, has sort of the greatest spectrum of cost. So I'll talk about sort of that spectrum of it, but they're the ones where, it has sort of a lot of things play into it. So based on the assessment, what we did is said, well, maybe there's one primary gateway sign. That could be anywhere from $18,000 to $32,000, depending upon what you want to do with it. Maybe there's secondary signs or secondary gateways, and if there's 3 of them, based on our analysis, maybe they're $5,000 a piece to $8,000 a piece, so you get a range of 15 to 24. The vehicular directional signs, I really tried to keep that in the quantity as to sort of the Nederland core of destinations and the intersections, maybe 12 to 18 signs. I wasn't thinking of it going very far out. You have some destinations that are way far out of town. Those signs have footers. They have to be breakaway. They have certain sizes that they have to be. So that's 75 to 125. Parking directional signs and identification of that lot. Again, depending upon the base and that sort of thing, maybe 18 to 24 total. The information kiosks, a static kiosk, 4 to 6 of those. I mean, a kiosk can be anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 to $15,000. Again, depending if it has a canopy or not, if it is a stone base. So that gives you a good sort of range there of 32 to 48, depending upon the design and the quantity. Interpretive panels, so if you want to tell your story, They're usually 2,800 to 4,200 a piece. When you look at a orientation map or a kiosk, a static one, like I said, it could be $8,000 to $12,000 for a static one. A digital one, you're going to look at maybe $24,000 to $48,000 a piece for those. So we're doing one in Mansfield, Texas. It looks like this. It's a 49-inch display. Theirs happens to be double-sided, so it's a little bit higher. I think it's $32,000 is the cost of this with the 49-inch display. So, it has, it's an exterior grade display. It's an LG, and it comes in either 49 or 55 inches. So, I mean, the things you have to think about with a digital kiosk, besides just cost, is there's sort of the administration of it, right? And the policy. So are you allowed to do it, right? Are you allowed to have advertising, the content? What can it be? So advertising, or does it have to be public service? Does it have to be wayfinding? Can it be all three? What's the software you're going to use? So some of those, like the LG, comes with turnkey software and you just use what they have, or are you going to hire an independent developer to do it? The screen type, is it touch screen? Is it interactive? Or is it just basically a display? And then physical requirements, getting power to the location, the climate. One in Mansfield, Texas, they have to worry about heat. You have different climate, and then glare, right? So there are things that you have to consider. And just then the project management and content management, getting public works and a fabricator and electrician on board. So there's that. And then there's also initial setup costs. So you have some costs regarding software and hardware and cabling. And then you have maintenance costs, which really is sort of low. It's, $280 per unit. You have remote service and some other things. So they are things to consider as you start to look at price.
So if I'm just, John, this is Andrew again. If I'm trying to do a quick yellow pad here of like take the median, low, median of everything you just presented, we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000 to $275,000 for realistic signage budget.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Okay, thanks.
Again, but that's if you did everything, right? The intent of the assessment was to say you could do all of it, or you could just pick and choose other elements that you feel are more important.
This is Danielle. I would like to comment that mainly I think the digital kiosk, especially with our free range Porsche, I think that would be very unfortunate if something happened to it, if someone ran into it. The maintenance on it, the power outages up here, I really think that having a static one would be smarter. And with that first design, which I'm hearing is the most cost effective, I think what we could do is start looking at what would be optimal and where we would want these would be a good step to look at. I don't know if that would be something to talk about tonight or to bring up for the action next month, but deciding how many we want of where, and then being able to really figure out the numbers for that. That's all.
So in our assessment, we did have preliminary locations, but they were by no means meant to be final. And that is sort of a next step as you go in the process. So our scope, so everybody knows, our scope is basically to get you to this level of information so that you can make some decisions. And then our next step would be to plan, put together the planning documents of where signs go, exactly what they would say for all of them, for whatever ones you choose, and then document it. And that would be based on, oh, we're going to do everything, or we're only going to do these 2 types, that sort of thing. And that's why we didn't go into a full scope at the beginning of the project, because we weren't, as Steve and I talked, we weren't sure what you wanted to do at that point. So this was sort of the first step to make some of those decisions. So you could have us say, well, we're just going to do kiosk and we'll do 5 of them. We'll figure out where they go, but we just need you to document them and that's it. Or we could go and say, well, we think over time, we're going to do most of these things, maybe everything but the gateways. And we could put together the guideline and the planning and the documentation for all of those. And then as you are ready to do each step, you have it. Just sort of bid out that component of it. So that's some of a decision you'll have to make as you go forward as well.
Great,
So-
thank you.
Yeah, Barbara, I just wanted to ask John, from what you've been hearing tonight, with most of us, leaning toward number 1, with some liking number 2, or some mix of those, is that enough information for like what you were hoping for to glean from this meeting?
Yeah, I think I have a basis for design, which is what I'm looking for. And we will go back and sort of put together a final version. And I don't know that you need to decide this tonight, but I think, what you may go forward with as far as the types of elements, that's what is sort of a next step decision on your end.
I just want to jump in, Steve and John, and say that, often I am asked to do design and quote projects that are really awesome and exactly what people want, but that are nowhere near what they can afford. And I wonder if, we're at a place where it makes sense to just kind of, John, I'm not trying to rain on your parade by any means, but for our size town, for our parking situation that's still somewhat in flux, and to what I'd like is to preserve the money left in your budget so that it's spent on the consensus of the board. And if what I'm coming away with tonight is that you're getting kind of the go-ahead of a color scheme of option 1, and we're going to get a design for option 1 that, based on the menu, may end up being $250,000 or more. I just think that's completely unrealistic for where we are as a town and where we are, budget wise. So why I just want to hammer this home is to say, hey, everyone, let's think about, the balance of John's contract and really what we want him to be focusing his energy on. Like he said, it's not all one or the other. There's not a single answer.
That's right.
But I just want to kind of say that again out loud, and then I will not beat that horse anymore. Okay, thank you guys.
I think you're exactly right. The intent of the assessment was not, and we don't build signs, so I'm not trying to sell you signs. And we looked at it from a wayfinding standpoint to say, in Netherlands, these are the types of elements you may need. You do not have to do all of them, but to put together the pricing to say you could do all of them, right? And it would be that, and that may be way out of your league, but you could look at other elements like the parking, or some of the lower cost ones. Say, yes, we do want to do that, and that's all we're going to do at the moment, and then that's what you would do. You could come back and say, we have X amount. What what can we fit in that amount? And next year we think we're going to have another amount. So let's try and plan for these two buckets, and what do we think is best spent on it? I think, the digital kiosk, again, you do a digital kiosk, that's a lot of money for one element.
Yeah, and I wasn't talking about digital kiosks, and I shared a link. I hope everyone got it on the chat. But it's for Connect Las Vegas, New Mexico. So, John, if you'd be willing to take a look at that link.
Familiar with it, yeah.
Okay, and like that was something that I kind of had in mind as, where we were at, in combination with maybe a couple of signs that get us pointed down the road of, building a long-term wayfinding plan.
No, this is Steve too. And Andrew, I wanted to mention also that I think a big part of this project is going to be phasing. And what, like John said, maybe we can decide what it is that we could spend in the near future, 1 to 2 years, and try to maximize our bang for our buck in terms of helping with wayfinding with that dollar amount. Or we could also try to decide on phases for what is top priority and work on that first. And John would be able to advise us if we're going off track as far as doing something and missing another component that should go along with it. But I think he could advise us with that when we get to that point as far as phasing to stay on budget throughout the whole project.
I agree, Steve. I'm just aware that we've allocated funds for John to do design work, and as a board, I think it warrants more discussion to make sure that we don't waste John's time
designing something you're not going to put in.
Exactly, design something that's kind of maybe
that's why we did this step.
7 to 10 years down the road. That's all.
No, you're exactly right. That's why we did this step, so that you could see sort of a design language and what we were moving towards, do the assessment so we can get a general range of quantities, apply costs to that, and then get to where we are now, where you can make those decisions. So you're exactly right.
This is Rhea. I have a quick question. Our existing, what I consider our gateway sign that Tom Hendricks put up, the mining head wall, welcome to Nederland, everybody knows what I'm talking about. That's going to stay, right? Do we need a different gateway? What's going on with that?
Yeah,
I think we haven't decided yet. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that's something you look at in the assessment to say, look, we have it. Do we really need to replace that? Maybe not. And then you move on to the next one. So that's part of your discussion in determining your priorities, where if you have something that's working, that may not be something that is high on your priorities to replace. So it sort of drops down.
John, do you think that existing gateway that we have can be integrated into the design elements, scenarios 1 and 2, or a combination, or whatever one you choose?
It's funny because, again, whenever I think of things like this, I think of it on a spectrum of, like, the one end is it stays exactly the way it is, right? And you don't change it. The other end, you put in something new, and maybe there's an idea in the middle where you sort of retrofit it or do something with color that brings it into the family that is being developed around it, so it fits, and it's a lower cost approach to it. So that's how I think about it. And then, we sort of make those decisions together. So that middle solution may be the right thing to do. Because, just to get it inconsistent.
This is Danielle. Has anybody looked at that sign closely, and perhaps maybe if it needs any maintenance, we can incorporate maintenance to get it to look a little bit more like the design we are going to choose to go with. And then we can keep the signage simple. Just, I like that idea of when we are online, the visual is there in person with what they're looking at on the phone. But if we need to do any maintenance on the original sign that Tom Hendricks built, then we can maybe incorporate the new design colors into it.
You know, that maintenance comment is a good comment, because you can even think about that in the parking directional signs. So the town may already have been holding a budget for maintenance of signs. So when they go to maintain something, now you have a design standard that you can start to roll out as part of the maintenance budget. All towns have some sort of maintenance budget for signs. So again, you're establishing that graphic standard through this project, and then trying to be a little bit unique with the way you're implementing portions of it.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments on wayfinding this evening? Should we bring this back as an action item next month? Do we feel like we have enough information?
I just wanted to ask John again, like from after this meeting, what would be your next steps in the project that we're currently doing?
Well, I think it's part of our current contract is we would come back and have that option that's called option 4, which is all the comments sort of combined into the final basis for design. And that's really our contract at this point. You know, there's a phase 2 of our contract, which would be, as we said earlier, is that you decide, you know, the final planning and documentation of the sign types that you're going to move forward with has to be done. That's phase 2 of our project. If that is all of this or just the parking directional signs, that's where you have to make a decision as to what you would want us to do. That's why we didn't, again, why we didn't do a full scope, because we weren't sure what components you wanted to move forward with. So, and that I have to put together a fee, and that fee, and I think that's what Andrew was saying earlier, was that you want to save some of that fee for some implementation. So it may be just documenting 1 or 2 sign types that you feel like you can afford to put in the next 2 years, and then go from there, rather than trying to do everything.
Yeah, I would, I think from my point of view at this point, and forgive my, you know, maybe not use the right language, but that maybe there's a special, you know, action committee that happens between now and next meeting, where we can have the members kind of straw poll what percentage of your remaining budget is allocated to, you know, which type of design that we need. Now seeing, you know, kind of some of these rough numbers of signage, and then also like thinking about parking, and understanding the town is undergoing a, you know, there's some parking shift and vehicle traffic shifts that are kind of on the docket. So I think, I don't know, I would make a motion to have a, you know, half hour or whatever, even if it's a straw poll. You know, John, if it was you saying, all right, Town of Ned, you know, what percentage of the remaining budget do you want me to kick towards static parking signs, or, you know, any one of these actual physical signs? What percentage do you want me to allocate towards And personally, I'm not a fan of digital kiosks at all. I think they would fail within 6 months up here. Just given the weather, and like you said, there's all the maintenance and updates and all of that stuff that kind of isn't, it's not a hidden cost, but it's just, I'll call it soft cost. So I think I would make a motion to have a, kind of a short meeting with all the members to get everyone on the same, or at least get ideas of everyone of what percentage we think the remaining time of your design contract should be allocated towards. It's not a really formal motion, but that's kind of where I'm at with this, if that makes sense.
No, that's yeah. I mean, I think that's where we are, and why we put this information together, so you have visuals, quantities, and costs, so that you can make those decisions. But that's exactly right.
So since this is a discussion item, we're not necessarily looking for a motion this evening. Is that correct? We would bring it back next month for moving forward and making a decision. And I realize that you're looking for a decision tonight, but I think a lot of us have been caught off guard by price ranges that we didn't have ahead of time. And it's definitely worth us discussing further, even if it's not in a meeting individually with one another, before we make any kind of decision.
Yeah, and if you want to put it like a subgroup together, and I can be on a call, and then I can be on the call again next month, to answer any questions.
Does that work for everyone?
I like that idea. I think that would be great, because I do feel like as we develop our ideas more, we'll want to run things by John for guidance and any input from him.
I just want to give you as much information so you can make informed decisions.
John, one question I had was on the presentation that I was looking at. I noticed that you had a few different maps, showing placement of various items. And I can't remember, on my screen, I wasn't able to blow it up enough. But did you have like your sort of first round of recommended vehicular signage placement yet on any of those maps?
No.
Okay. So in other words, at this point, we wouldn't really know, like if we just wanted to concentrate on parking as an example and getting people to the parking lots, we know a lot of our lots, but there's nothing in your presentation that would kind of guide us toward that.
No, there's nothing in there. I looked at the lots at the intersections, and that's how I came up, just based on my experience, what I thought the quantities might be.
Okay. Yeah, because I feel like if we're having any kind of a work session with the board, that'll be part of what we'll want to try to determine is, what if we are focusing on, say, parking lots.
Yeah, I can provide something for you.
Okay, great. And we can get some information and feed it to you to look at and, give us your input.
No problem.
Okay, thanks.
Great. That sounds great. I think that is the wrap up for this agenda item, and we will get back in touch with you, John, Steve and I that are on that committee, and talk with the other board members individually to figure out what our next step might be and give you the information of when our next meeting is in September.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, John. Appreciate the presentation.
Great, and with that, we're going to move into the 2022 preliminary budget discussion, and it looks like Kate will be presenting that.
Oh, good. I am unmuted. Sorry. Hi, everyone. So I'm just going to kind of kick off things for you all. Let me see here. Let me pull up. So we have started the budget process. Barb, Ron, and I will be meeting with town this month to discuss the budget, to kind of to start our discussions. And so we were hoping today to start getting some feedback, some just initial feedback from everyone. And then next month, the budget will come back as an action item for you after it's been refined through meeting with town and us talking with accounting staff from town, and then based on your feedback from this meeting as well. And so what I've put together here is I've taken from Hope's budget spreadsheet and put it into this so that it's a little bit easier, as easy as we can to kind of navigate through all the different items that we've got going on. And when it comes back next month, I'll clean it up a little bit and you won't see the 2019, 2020, and 2021 history. But I just thought for this discussion, and Steve had brought it up as well through POX, that seeing what we'd spent the last few years could be helpful in seeing how we need to change anything or where we need to ebb and flow. So the main things that I'm hoping to get from y'all tonight are, what categories that you want to adjust for 2022 based on 2021. And, given COVID and things, that's going to affect things that we may actually want to be looking at 2020 and 2019 for some items. And, I just kind of want to bring your attention to that. And then also I want you to be thinking about for 2022, our 2021 projects, how much we need to move forward. Is there, and then this kind of leads into my last question, is there wiggle room to even do anything else next year? Or do we want to see through the projects that we have, given that the spots that they are? So I just kind of wanted those things to be in your head as we just kind of go through and look at this snapshot. And, some of this stuff is, IT, that's pretty easy, but, I just want us to kind of go through it together. And maybe this isn't the best way. I don't know. I haven't done this with you guys before. So feel free to correct me or turn the conversation whichever way. But this is how I kind of thought to set us up for this conversation. So here we go. Does anybody have anything to start with? Or do you just kind of want me to start going in line by line? Barb, do you have a preference?
I think line by line is fine. I guess the only thing that comes to my mind is we just discussed the small business grants to
absolutely
Ned, and I think that we have to have a line item somewhere in there that says we're going to promise this much per year out of the budget. And where do we put that?
Yeah, so there is a special events line item down. And it's, I believe, let me see, Miranda, I think you need to scroll down. Have we found it yet? Event support.
Perfect, thank you.
So yeah, so everything is on here. And that's why when I take a little more ownership of this, I wanted to work from Hope's because it's what everybody is the most familiar with. And she's put a lot of work into this. But now as I draft this up myself, I'll give it to you in a different way that hopefully you all are okay with, and I can tweak it. But for this, I just want us to use what she had started, just so that it is what you're used to working with. But I will update this with the $1,000 that's already going to Ned. So you really only have $4,500 that you would be carrying over.
I don't think we'll have any carryover by the end of the year. Once somebody knows we've done anything, we'll get a lot more requests.
Well, that does bring up something. So a lot of you know that my background is in granting funding. And so for me, I think it would be great, and for the board, that if we could identify like a few times a year that we take applications. I know we need to keep it flexible, especially through COVID, because things change constantly. But I think in the future, I'd like to move to that more so that you all could have a bunch of applications at once, see what all is coming, and get more information, and just become, closer to the agencies and the businesses and the communities, that we're working with. And I just think that there could be a lot of good things from having that kind of way of doing that, maybe 3 or 4 times a year versus ad hoc, because I worry that ad hoc, we may miss something. And maybe somebody doesn't really know that we have this funding available. So I would like to make it, kind of like how we did the artist RFQ. We do an RFP and we say, hey, this money is available. This is the limit, but I just kind of want you to also think about that potentially for the future as a way to be able to have everybody know that this is available, and so that we can get the most bang in the community.
And that was something that we did quarterly when I worked for Stephen. We had a similar idea, and quarterly seemed to work very well. And it did give people a deadline of, you want to apply for second quarter funds, you have to turn it in by this time. So I would definitely be in support of that. So
Great.
this is, do you want to go line by line or what? This is kind of just to feel out where we're at.
Yeah, this is kind of to feel out where you're at. Like next month when we're approving the budget, I'm definitely going to go through everything with a fine tooth comb with you. But if everybody's kind of looked at it and your impressions aren't wanting me to go into depth about everything, that's fine. I'm happy to lead this conversation in whatever way makes the most sense to you all. I don't want to bore you to death with going through everything if that's not what you feel like. If you guys want to spend more time actually on looking at the budget for the projects versus the things that are more static, like IT and paper. I don't know if there was nothing that jumped out to me as I was working that I was like, hey, we need to discuss this, but let me make sure here.
I guess one question I had was, we did the stopgap relief and the COVID grants last year. Is there still anything available that we can be applying for and distributing to local businesses that are still struggling? There are a lot still struggling. I know the town received a grant, but I don't think that we've applied for anything additional. And is that something that we should be looking at to include in our budget? Do we have any money left in our budget for that?
There is no money left from what I see, but that's absolutely something I can do more research on and see if there's any remaining funds left anywhere.
Great, that would be great. I don't have any questions about any of the others. I see, small bumps to take care of things that obviously are going to go up next year. So I have no questions about it. Does anyone else have any questions about the budget? Do you want me to go around in a circle?
Yeah, that probably, I think that would be great, so that we make sure that everybody has a moment to say something. And you can always reach out directly to me via email. This is all coming back to you again. So after you've looked at this a little bit more, if you have some questions, I'm always happy to go over that, or reach out to Barb or Ron or whomever. But because with the three of us will be kind of moving this forward.
And
okay.
Yeah, Barb, if I could just say a couple things about the budget process, I think it might help the group. One thing is that I know Karen Garrity always stressed that the operating budget, which is our small budget, that was up higher in the thanks on this, that's the one that the BOT is really more concerned with, because it's our expenditures for operations, and that's more what they have, part of the overall town budget. It's important for that more. And I think that a lot of those are pretty static, like we were saying, that they're not going to change a whole lot. And I think running through those, even Barb and Ron and Kate could tweak those from this year into next year, with some likely what the expenditures would be for those line items. And if there are any new line items or line items that need to get removed. So that one, in the past couple of years that I've been on the board, has been really pretty easy to tweak year over year, because there's not a lot of swings. And then I think for the board to think about for the TIF funding, which was the lower section on this budget sheet that we were looking at, I think those are the ones that probably Ron Mitchell, with our overall funding information, could help us with. But I think we should think about, are any of these projects something that we want to not work on next year? And otherwise, we would need to have some funding in there, and maybe we'd want to tweak the funding down for some projects that aren't expected to go very far next year versus ones that we're really going to be working on. But I think that's one way to look at the TIF budget is, are any of these projects things that we would want to abandon at this point, or if not, then we keep them in here, and how do we fund them? So I just wanted to add those ideas to it.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Sure.
This is Ron. There may well be one. the funding that we approve for First Street improvements has not been very well received, and well over half of the merchants are not in favor of it. So we might want to consider rescinding that resolution. But I'll bring that forward at the next meeting.
Great, thanks, Ron. Do you have any other questions or comments about the budget? No worry. You went to Rhea. Do you have any questions or comments about the budget?
I will
Sure.
say this, that some of the things we do have on the boards, particularly the Big Springs parking project that's somewhat in abeyance right now, is most likely going to cost a lot more than we actually initially thought, just because of incredible cost increases in the construction industry. So we'll probably bring some revisions for that project and some of the others. So I think we should be very cautious with next year and limit our ideas so that we finish some of the things we started before we dive into more stuff. Okay, that's all.
This is Rhea. I'm glad to see the $10,000 for continuation of supporting public art. I think that's great. I hope that the committee can help shepherd another mural in town or more. You know, I did note that the beautification budget, I doubt we'll use it all this year. So I'm kind of wondering, you know, do we keep that number in there, hoping that we can help start to do more things, putting in more flower beds in places? Because I certainly think there's more things we can do. I think that the Beautification Committee, which I am on, you know, I feel like, to be honest, I haven't had a lot of time to dedicate to it in terms of developing new areas for planters. I kind of have more time in the non-flower season. So, you know, it might be nice to get some reinvigoration of folks that really want to spearhead that, because I certainly can see doing installing more flower beds in places and doing some other things. I know, you know, Barb had approached me about, hey, let's get the flower pots, hanging baskets back at the shopping center and things like that. So that wasn't included this year. So anyways, just those are my thoughts off the top of my head.
So you know my position on that. I'm all for advancing what's ever left to the next year and not putting it back in the general fund, because if you can have a better program and you have excess one year, I don't see anything wrong with using it the next year. And I think budgets that encourage people to spend everything because they'll lose it if they don't is a very bad practice. Thank you.
Thanks,
And I
Ron.
should just say, if I can just follow up about the Beautification Committee, you know, Claudia was on that with me, and she, of course, has left. I was hoping Karina would be part of it, and I haven't really connected with her, and I'm not sure if she's on the meeting tonight, but I'm not sure she has the time to get dedicated to it either. So maybe if someone else is super interested, maybe reach out to me after the meeting by email or something. Thanks.
But this is Steve. I'd like to just say one more thing about the operating budget, the, you know, roughly 30,000-ish budget that we have. And just an idea perhaps for how we could do this is if Kate and Barbara and possibly Ron, between this meeting and the next, look at that operating budget from this year, the dollar amounts, and then also look at our cumulative spending for each line item, you know, and extrapolate out to the 12-month mark, then perhaps for the next meeting, you could bring back to us, what our current budget was for this year, how much we plan to spend this year of it. And because of that, why you would say like it should go up or down so much for next year. And I think that would be a really clear way for us to see what the current budget is, what our current spending is, and then project that into next year. And I would feel like we could vote, have it be an action item to vote on it at the next meeting after discussing, maybe a little incremental ups or downs for each line item. But there's only like 10 or 15 line items in that budget. So I feel like with a little bit of better presentation and some explanation of why a budget item would go up or down for next year, everybody could follow it and take a vote and have that at least solidified for the town after next meeting.
Okay.
Just wanted to throw that out there.
For the operating, yeah, I was trying to work within what we had to kind of show, you can see it all here. It's just not as easily digestible as you're right that I can make it, because I was trying to give you more of the history too. So
Right.
we'll definitely, I'll do that for the next one. That'll be pretty easy. And I just as a note, the next month I'm taking over the QuickBooks and getting the company file from Tanner, and so that will also help with tweaking some of these numbers and making sure that there's nothing that I'm missing through the transition or anything in April and May. And so that won't be a problem. I had kind of hoped that was kind of my goal to bring that back. So that's great. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, sure. And I think that could be a really simple thing with like 3 columns,
Absolutely.
Current budget, what we expect to spend this year, and then next year's budget. And everyone could look at it and say yes, or maybe we need to tweak 1 or 2.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Cool, thanks.
Thanks, Steve. And Danielle, do you have any questions or comments on the budget?
At first, no, but I do want to say I'm still so excited about Ned Public Art, and beside myself that is happening. We are already brainstorming on future projects and hoping to be looking at grants and getting donations from the town. So even though we have a budget, we are looking to add to it and just do the best we can with that. And thank you for including it. Otherwise, I don't think I grasp all these numbers as well as I can if I do mull them over and learn about it. So that's all.
Great, thanks, Danielle. And Andrew, do you have any questions or comments? Is Andrew still here?
Yeah, sorry, I just had to unmute and change screens here. I do not have any. I was just trying to look year over year of 2020 proposed and actual, and just see if anything jumped out at me. But I can do that on my own. But at this point, I don't have any specific questions. And when it comes to Big Springs later on, I can talk about that, but that's not what we're talking about now. So I don't have anything to add. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And Steve Roundtree.
Really just thank you to, I guess, the comments from Ron and Steve, some insight into the budgeting process and how to look at things going forward. So I don't have any additional comments on things at this point.
Great, thank you. And we can open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment on the budget at this time? Okay, seeing and hearing none. This is just a discussion item, so we'll be bringing it back next month. So we can move forward to the next item, which is the money market account, and that is being presented by Ron.
So I mentioned before in the meeting that it doesn't look to me like the Big French project will get off the ground this year. We do have an excessive amount of money drawing no interest in the bank, so I am proposing now for an action item for next meeting to take 400,000 and put it in a money market account, which provides somewhat more interest. It's in line with our guidelines. It's also in line with our percentages that we limit ourselves to in terms of investments. So, and then we can use the money directly right out of the money market account at any time we want. Pay slightly less than a CD, but I don't think a CD would necessarily be the right thing to do. We already have one, and we have our line of credit established. So when we do need to borrow and pay back because of the this quirky law that the state says we have to borrow the money and then pay it back, we're in a financial position where we can borrow it from our line of credit and then just take it from our TIF funds and pay it back the next day. But the money market account would be specifically for projects that are in the works, that we have cash in the bank drawing very low interest, and it'd give us some more. In the report there, you saw that we made a small amount of interest, about $1,000, but that's a lot better than $91. So does anybody have any comments or questions about that proposal? I'll be glad to take them.
Yeah, this is Steve Carew. I just wanted to mention, Ron, you did mention this, but just to stress to the board that a money market account is essentially like a savings account where it's entirely 100% liquid, and it just earns a higher percentage than keeping it in a checking or savings account.
That's
But
correct.
Yeah, I just wanted to clear that up in case anybody was curious.
Yeah,
so it's not locking our money up at all.
No.
There's no, no regulation that says that we have to keep it there for a certain number of months or years or anything.
That is correct.
Great, thanks, Steve. Let's open this up to the board for questions. Rhea, do you have any questions or comments?
Don't. Thanks.
Okay. And Danielle, do you have any questions or comments?
It sounds like a smart idea to me, though I don't know it very well. I think I would trust Ron with money, and that's all.
Okay. And Andrew?
No, nothing to add at this time.
Okay. And Steve Roundtree?
It seems like a good decision, but nothing else to add.
Okay, thank you. And I don't have any further comments at this time.
I have a comment. Maybe not our proposal. Well, there was a question from one of the trustees about our investments. Is there something that I need to answer, or has that been taken care of?
That's been taken care of, Ron, and that is for the board. That's for Ron's talking about our investment policies update that's going before the Board of Trustees. There was a question from Trustee Danforth, I believe, about where our money was invested, and I put it in the aim for the Board of Trustees that the only investment we have right now is the certificate of deposit.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Kate, when will that go to the board?
That goes next Tuesday.
Okay, thank you.
That, as well as our other item from last month, the resolution for the fire department.
Great, thank you. I will open it up in case there is any public comment. And hearing none, we will move forward to the next item. And the next item on the discussion items is the Npac Transparency, and it looks like Danielle will be presenting that.
Great, thank you. So what I am learning is that that Ned Public Art needs to be transparent for reasons of letting people know that we're doing stuff and what we're doing. And I would like to develop more public transparency. So one of the thoughts was to have a Facebook page, which we're working on, and Instagram, but it made sense to me that we connect with Nederland Downtown Development by jumping onto their website and being able to update through there, and then be on the Mountaineer updates so that people can continue to see what we're doing and be involved and know more about when they can participate and what to look for. So I was wondering, is it possible that we jump onto the NDDA website and be part of the article on the Mountaineer News?
So for the article, anyone can submit an article, so I can give you that part of it. We're definitely always happy to share the news with the public, so that is no problem. As far as the website, we're just kind of beginning to update that, and Kate can tell you more of what the possibility of it is of updating that. But my question would be whether or not things can be updated without board approval. So that would be my first question on the website and especially on social media. And maybe Miranda knows a little bit about that as well as a town entity. So hopefully Kate and Miranda can chime in.
Yeah, it's Miranda. So I guess for this, you know, you may have seen that Peter's launched a really amazing social media campaign on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, our website. We have our new website coming up. So anything you send to us, Danielle, we'll get it up within a day or two. He actually has a calendar and can schedule them out like 2 weeks in advance. So if you know things are coming down the pipeline, send them to us and we'll add it into our structure. So I'll send you an email. Actually, I'll put it in the chat, his email address. But that goes for any DDA item.
Great.
And with regard to the website, we could, well, I'll say about the Mountaineer article. I also think you're talking about when I write the articles for the Mountaineer, and those would naturally get included as through the updates of what different committees are doing, and especially with there is so much happening right now that it would naturally kind of be in that article. And then with regard to, I mean, we could certainly, like Barb said, you know, we're just starting to do the updates and as well doing our updates to the link to our link to the town's website. So this is a great time to be having this conversation. And I'm sure that there's a way that we could naturally, you know, loop the Facebook or the Instagram into there. And now as we also meet and look forward, and now knowing that you want to put a more publicity to this, especially with Greg's mural going up soon, maybe the communications committee and those working on the website, we can kind of look at the website through that vein and see if there's an opportunity there, if that's something that the committee's open to.
Nice.
Can I just ask a question about, so we're basically discussing what are the best venues to keep the public in the loop with Nederland Public Art and their goings on?
Yeah, what are the best ways to get communication out there and how to follow up with them and make it happen?
So I think it's Miranda again. I guess I can just tell you, so in addition to Peter not only posting, he's also tracking and kind of trending. And in town, Facebook is like the #1 way to engage. And I know it's got its misses because not everyone has it, but it far exceeds any other way of communication. So I would encourage a strong social media campaign, which can be linked to other sites like Instagram and can also be put on Ned Heads and Ned Talk. But
yep,
that's what we're kind of proving time and time again with any post that we get most of the interaction off of Facebook.
That's really neat that you guys are figuring that out.
Yeah, we also have a program too called Text My Gov, which we'll bring to you all when we're getting kind of in the thick of it. But it's another opportunity for us to text messages out to people. So if Danielle, you want to link to a website, it's like 140 character, like Twitter, like blurb, but we could say, hey, check this out. And then ideally get people to engage that way. We're just trying to get the membership up. And so I'll bring it to the DDA probably next month. But that's a really cool feature. I think right now we have 100 residents, so if we could get that to 500 plus residents, that's coming straight to your phone. And that needs to become our number one way of probably interacting with the community.
Yeah. You're talking to one of those people who doesn't have Facebook. But I just is like, is there any way to make money off of Facebook and like advertising the portal of Ned Public Art where businesses could advertise and like money could go back into the DDA funds somehow? Since Facebook is, ultimately like an advertising company.
Ideally, what Ned Public Art wants to do is engage our community and get funding through them to support us, which would bring funding to Nederland Downtown Development Authority. So I would certainly want to look into that and see what would be possible as we learn how to do it now that we see what's available.
I just think if we're any involvement in Facebook, we should try and leverage it to somehow make Facebook, pay its share.
I'm not very familiar with it, and I also want to be aware of advertising and being careful with that. For some reason, my brain connects it with advertising on murals, and I want to be sure that I'm not doing things that are not appropriate. But I do want to look into it and get the best outcome of the time put into it.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely realize that most people and social media is everywhere. And that's just, so maybe that's a conversation for another time or totally not related at all. But just wanted to throw that out there.
And Andrew, if you're not on Facebook, where do you get most of your information to have an idea of where else to be reaching out to?
A lot of like word of mouth, talking to people, and just talking to local business owners, like but being in the community. Just Facebook's not something that I've found to be of any value in my life at all. So that's all.
Great.
Thanks, Andrew and Danielle. Let's see. Are there any other comments on Ned Public Art and reaching out into the community from the board? Anybody else that has an idea or wants to share anything about it? Since we're getting well past 8 o'clock now, rather than going name by name, if anyone else has any comments, can they just speak up?
Way to go.
Okay. And are there any public comments about Npac transparency?
Move.
Hearing and seeing none, let's move into the board training update with Kate.
All right. So this This will be quick. So we have our board orientation training coming up August 25th at 6 p.m. And given that the board can't do hybrid meetings, we need to decide whether to meet in person or meet virtually. And so I guess the best way would maybe, Barb, if you just want to go through and ask everyone if they want to, or if people don't feel comfortable with that, you could each email me how you're feeling about meeting virtually or meeting in person. And I don't know if it's kind of majority rules, if everybody's not on board, we stay web, or how you all want to move that forward. But I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention so that we could get that hashed out. Steve had graciously offered to make a safe space for us at HubNed if we chose to be in person. I also can reach out to the community center. So those are all things for you to consider. And Barb, I'll leave it to you to figure out how, if we just want to do an email vote or if you just want to do a roll call vote, or not roll call, but go through the line.
I think let's just go through the line real quick because it's a kind of a simple decision. And I'll start. I'm fine with meeting in person at HubNed. Steve.
This is Steve Caro. I'll say that I'm going to be out of town, unfortunately, but I would love to listen to the minutes of it and see if there's anything I could learn from that meeting. And yeah, like Kate had mentioned, I think HubNed would be a really good location for in-person because we can have a lot of windows open if people want, and our HVAC system is excellent with HEPA filtration and everything. So I feel like it's a very safe space for people if they wanted to meet there in person. But unfortunately, I'll miss, if it's in person, I'll miss it for sure, just because I'll be out of the state.
Okay. And Rhea.
For this particular meeting, it would be easier for me to do it virtual.
Okay. And Danielle.
I do not have a preference, so however people decide would be best, I'm up for either.
Okay. And Andrew?
I'm available and can do it in person. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. Steve Roundtree?
I can do either way. I guess the one question that I would have, if it feels like there's more productivity to do it one way versus the other, and if we can have that be the driving decision. I guess I feel like this is it's an opportunity for me to learn, and whatever format makes it a better opportunity to actually put our time to good use. That's my recommendation.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Ron?
I hate virtual meetings, so I'm very much in favor of in-person meetings. So I would do my best to make sure I got there.
Okay, great. And that's everybody that's on the meeting. Virtual. Sounds like more are okay with either or in person, with only 2 saying virtual. Do we need to make a motion or anything on this, or is it just a majority rules? It's a discussion item.
Hey Barb, can I interrupt for 1 sec?
Yeah.
So that meeting, I'm planning to be out of town for work, so I could be available by phone is there no way, I know the word virtual is no hybrid meetings, but couldn't somebody just have their cell phone on speaker and call me and I could join that way? Or
yeah, well, yes,
is that not going to work?
Rhea,
why not?
like I can have my laptop open so that you could be there, virtually.
It's Miranda. Here's what I'm going to tell you is if unless you guys are all circled around a laptop, Rhea, you're not going to catch what everyone says, especially if you're socially distant. which is highly encouraged. That's the problem with hybrid. It's not that people can't call you, but to be able to pick up sound across an entire room is just not.
Okay. Okay. Understood. Thanks.
There's a way we
I
could
just
get,
wanted to mention, oh, sorry, go ahead, Ron.
my wife's an interpreter and she has groups and she has some device that she hangs around everybody's neck and everybody's connected. I'm going to ask her if I could borrow that because I really like to have Rhea there, and I know she's got work that takes her out of town a lot. But I think we have a team, and we need to keep our team together and keep working as a team. So I want to investigate a way to see if somehow we can't get this done. So.
Well, Ron, too, I guess, I still have funding to try and navigate a different solutions. We're just running into roadblocks because of the way in which like our rooms are structured. If it's something that's worth town investing in, I'm happy to do that versus you having to take them from your wife, and maybe we can connect offline. I do agree. I think that's been our challenge the whole time, is like, we want to figure out how to do hybrid. It's been an uphill battle.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll
and
check into it.
I also just wanted to mention that this is, we're talking about, I think, is for the board training, right? Which Ray would have had 2 times already, although it'll probably be revamped a little bit. And I was thinking that she and I, if we're both traveling, if someone was recording it, we could listen to the recording and probably get all the necessary information that way. Because I think this is a rather simple meeting. It's not like discussing new topics and all that.
I was going to bring that up, and I'm planning on having a PowerPoint presentation that we can easily share with you to refresh your memory about different things about sunshine law and Robert's Rules of Order, those items, those types of things that would be, as you stated, a refresher for you and Rhea. Because to Steve Roundtree's point, for the newer people, it might be great to be in person and then actually get to see each other, meet their new board members, and there might be a better learning capacity to be in person there. But I'm also happy to do virtually. I wish we could figure out hybrids, whatever everybody wants to do, I'm happy to make happen.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kate. Are we okay then saying that we're going to do this in person with the idea of recording it and sharing it with anyone from the board that cannot call in or hear if they call in?
I like that idea.
Yes.
Are we still able to say masks preferred?
Yes.
You can always say it, sure.
I'm definitely in for person then, especially if Ronnie could look into that device and see if it's worth investing in.
Well, maybe we can, I'll just do some checking. There's got to be a way to solve this problem.
Great, thanks, Ron.
Sure.
Then we'll plan on being in person on August 25th at 6 p.m. at HubNet.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. And let's move forward to the next item, which is the Town of Nederland website update.
So as we, sorry.
Go ahead.
As we mentioned before, the Communications Committee, Barb and myself, have been talking to town about updating the website with Peter. And one of the questions that we have in the update is, are the board members interested in having their personal emails listed, or would they like them to go to a more centralized DDA email? So in the past, your personal emails have been up there, but what was pointed out to us during our meeting with Peter in town was that planning board sends them all to one planning email. So we wanted to, as we move this forward, put it before you all what your preference is. And so again, this can just be if Barb, you just want to ask everyone what their preference is, and we can kind of move forward that way.
Absolutely. Let's see, Steve Carreau.
Yes, one of my questions is if we had just a central NDDA email, is there any way for someone from the public or anybody to email directly to one of the members, or would it be out to everybody?
Normally the way, so I could ask that. So I think it can go both ways, and Miranda may know more than me, but typically it can go both ways. And so it could all just come to me, or it could come to all of you. So if you do want to do that, that could be another prong to the question.
Yeah, I think it's Miranda. For example, like town hall, you can obviously email each one of us individually, but we have then a town hall email address that would reach all of us. And so we could, the DDA@nederlandco.org won't go anywhere. But if it's preferred to direct it to Kate, that can absolutely be done.
Yeah, I guess my question was just I didn't know if anybody would ever want to reach out to one of us in particular from the public, and then the main NDDA email wouldn't serve them very well.
I guess I would argue like Board of Trustees, the Planning Commission has this too, where if they're interested in just connecting with one of you, typically they email town staff or they would email Kate asking for your
yeah.
specific information. That happens more often than not. And then we do that connection email.
Okay. Yeah, then I was just,
Oh, sorry.
oh, yeah, I just wanted to finalize that. I was just curious about that point about it, but I'm actually fine either way. So I would go with whatever the majority is.
So one thing I will say is I would maybe recommend that you lean towards just the DDA or Kate's, just because spam in our email is really high. We're a government entity, so scammers are going to just scour our website looking for email addresses. And I don't think, personally, I wouldn't want my personal email address to be a part of that possible scam.
Yeah, I would just add that for me, like searching history and kind of archive to be able to, search whether it's NDDA or Kate rather than various emails would help me be able to search through archives. And again, the spam thing, the secondary factor. But primary to me is more of the archive organizational factor.
So Andrew, it's easier for you to have it sent to your personal email. Would you want to?
No, I'm sorry. It's easier for me to have it sent to the
central
town. Yeah, central email. Yep.
Okay. Great, thanks. And Rhea?
I guess I don't have a big preference. I hope I wouldn't get a lot of spam, but whatever works for everybody else. I guess I do just want to bring up the idea of us having a listserv where we can have open communication among all of us that's open to the public, so we can discuss more items and maybe have more communication on projects and move things along. The sunshine laws are pretty restrictive, and I know it's been discussed in the past and it doesn't sound like there's very good solutions, but I just thought I'd bring it up again.
Rhea, and I know you asked about it, and I know Kate and I touched on it. We actually talked to our town attorney, and she said that is not a viable solution, unfortunately, because of its accessibility. You are then removing people who maybe they don't have the technological access to look at some sort of listserv type thing. And so it's obviously not common because it doesn't happen in other municipalities. And she said that we should stay away from that just because the liability is there that business is being conducted not in an open format that's accessible to all.
Okay, thanks for that update. Sorry if you told me that before and I forgot.
No, I don't think I brought it back up to the board. I know Kate and I just talked one-on-one about it, so I'm glad. Thank you for the reminder.
Thanks. And Danielle?
It sounds like having a central would be most beneficial. I would prefer that.
Okay, thanks. And Ron?
I'm in favor of a central one where somebody sends me an email and they've got a gripe that the whole board has a chance to see it and think about it. just because our schedules are so varied, so time so limited, you never know when you're going to have a second to look at something. And that, I believe, would help us all be a lot better prepared. So I'm very much for the central communication post.
Great, thanks, Ron. And Steve Roundtree.
I agree with the central as well.
Great. Kate, does that give you the
That's
information?
That's
Okay.
what I needed. Thank you so much, everybody.
Great, thank you. And now we are at informational items, which is basically committee reports. And I didn't get mine in time to get it sent to you. And I would rather just kind of catch it all up next month, but I did want to say real quickly, the 4th of July survey that we talked about last month is still out there. I'm going to bring it back to the September meeting. Right now, we are about 50% of people that have responded say yes to fireworks, 50% no, or tell me more information. And we actually have a lot of interest in things like a 4th of July picnic and parade, which everybody loves. We've had over 70 responses, and I'll keep promoting it until August 31st, and then I'll bring that to you next month. And I think that's pretty much the biggest thing I've been working on is getting feedback this month. So that's my report. Ron, do you have a treasurer report?
It's in the packet, so we're running over time, so I don't want to enumerate.
Great, thank you. And Kate?
Well, I already kind of gave you the biggest update for this month is we're working on the budget and taking over the company files so that we can give Tanner back a little bit of time and he can just oversee us on the big things that we had envisioned paying for him for, and the everyday stuff I'll take over. And so that'll help us as we move forward. So that's really the biggest thing that I've been working towards, and I'm excited to get that started and lift that off.
Great, thank you. And Miranda with the town staff report.
Yes, our report's in the packet. It's pretty long. I guess the one thing I just want to highlight is COVID. We are seeing a rise in cases, mainly due to the Delta variant. And so again, the kind of push is to get people vaccinated. And just a reminder to businesses that Katrina can do an incentive, which is $100 to the employee and $100 to the employer to get vaccinated. And there is a clinic this Friday. So just trying to get that information out. We're still waiting guideline from Boulder County Public Health on indoor masking order. But the public health did pass an order on Monday that kids 2 and older and anyone who works in those facilities will need to mask in any sort of child care or child-oriented facility. And so there are a series of jurisdictions who are doing strict mask guidelines, but Mayor Larson does feel like he'd like to wait for public health before we do a town issuance of that type of indoor mask order, kind of across the board.
Okay, great, thank you.
Barbara, I'm sorry, this is Steve. Could I just ask a question for Miranda?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Miranda, last month, I think it was that Karen Garrity in her report had mentioned that the Nederland has had at that point only like a 43% vaccination rate. And I was wondering if you know anything about where that data comes from or where I could see an update on that. It was kind of shocking to me knowing that Boulder County is like 75%, that our town is at 43%.
It comes from a public health dashboard, and I will send a link to that after the meeting here to the whole DDA. And, I am sad to kind of inform everyone that we are still hovering around those really low numbers. And at this point, we're kind of up against, if people don't want to be vaccinated, they've really probably made their mind up. There may be a small percentage who are still on the fence that we're trying to reach. But that definitely is a kind of a cultural challenge we have to overcome here, is that our numbers we're not seeing a dramatic increase in vaccination numbers.
Okay, thanks.
And Miranda, just real quick, a question as well. With the $100 for the person that gets vaccinated and the $100 for the business, does that have to be Nederland business, Nederland resident? For instance, we live in Gilpin County, and we're all vaccinated, but there are people out here that you know, may or may not work in town. Is that open to anyone, or is that specific to Boulder County?
It's actually open. It's I believe to the Peak to Peak region that she's received funding for that, and I know she's Katrina's trying to get creative and how to help people, even down to like providing bus passes and or rides to get people to like their second vaccination if say they do the first one here and we don't have one in enough time. She really will work with whoever needs to be vaccinated and helping them get access to the first and the second.
Great, thank you.
Does anyone have a link to that information about the $100 for an employee? It might be something nice to just be able to share through our Eldora channels to our staff.
Unfortunately, I don't have a flyer or anything, but I'll forward you, Steve, actually I'll just send it to the whole DDA, the last email I had sent out about it. I'm not sure, I might still have Brett on the last one. So I'll send it to the whole DDA board so you can see how to get a hold of her for that incentive piece.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks, Miranda. We have a Beautification Committee report that was submitted by Mike. Does anyone?
And I can just, this is Rhea. I mean, just to sum up what Mike said in his report is that the watering is way down this year. And, you know, we really think it's because we've replaced all the soil and the planters and washed and kind of revamped the wick system. So that capillary action with our farm tubs is working way, way better this year than it was last year. Of course, you know, the extra rain, it has been a little bit rainier this summer than it was last summer. That's helped too, but he's only having to fill those farm tubs like every 4 or 5 days sometimes. So his hours are way down. And I think that is what we were achieving for sustainability is to have these farm tub systems work. And so that's huge. I think he mentioned, you know, installing a little flower garden in front of Town Hall. You know, I think there's lots of opportunities for other pocket gardens. And, you know, I'm not looking at his report right now. So if anyone else wants to chime in. But yeah, no, things are going well with it.
Okay, thanks, Rhea. And the next report would be Big Springs Committee.
Yeah, I know Ron mentioned he didn't think it was happening this year, and I probably am in agreement with him. My short, I know we're over time, but it's basically, I did have a conversation today with one of TIBA's representatives who was very optimistic that they would have permit-ready plans within about a week, and they're very close to selecting a contractor. That being said, there's plan review time, so we're still waiting for information from Tebow on his wall, and that's about it right there.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And I have the communications and the committee, which I will bring forth next month. The committee is still a committee that is within the DDA, and we probably have some stuff to talk about, but I'm going to bring it forward as a discussion item, so I don't think that we need to go over it tonight. The performance space, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we have anything happening yet with the performance space, but I think that we should have that as a discussion next month.
That's why I included it, just to remind everybody that might be up and going again, and to get it on everyone's radar, and to find out if there's people interested in it. I'm not sure who's on that committee anymore. And so that's why I put it on there, just to spark that in people's minds.
And maybe we can talk about that at our training, where there are extra kind of spaces on some of the committees. And then public art. Danielle, did you have anything to add from earlier with what you've already presented to the board?
No, I think I covered most everything. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And wayfinding, we have definitely covered tonight and we'll be discussing further unless Steve has anything else about wayfinding. Steve Carreau?
Thank you. No, no, I don't. Thanks.
Okay, great. That would wrap up the committee reports. Is there any other business? Hearing none, I would ask if there is a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second that motion.
And
Aye.
Kate, would you call the roll? Do we have to do an official roll or can we just all say aye?
Aye.
You could probably do, when it is official to do it official, you might just want to ask if anyone is opposed. That's easier.
Is anyone opposed to adjourning?
There we go.
Hearing none, I say we adjourn. Thank you everyone and for sticking in extra long tonight as we sorted through some stuff. Next time we'll be faster.
Thank you, Barbara, leading us. That was great.
Thank you, Barbara. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye.